Good morning, good afternoon, wherever it is you might be listening from, and welcome to Dugout Talk as we continue our series on the 30 teams breakdown. My name is Stephen Gossman.
My name is Cameron Lingle.
And fans, we have a very exciting guest for us on the show today, coming all the way from north of the border. He currently works for Sportsnet. His name, Brendan Kawazoye.
Thanks for having me, guys.
So, Brendan,
Absolutely.
why don't you just give us a little brief intro about yourself? Tell the fans who you are and what you do, and kind of what's gotten you into the Toronto Blue Jays, as that's who we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, so I signed on with Real Sport in October of 2017, and that's where I met Stephen and Cam when they joined on. Um, Real Sport actually came to my attention by one of my colleagues, Shell Gandhi, who also used to write for it. So he highly recommended that website, and I joined on. And of course, I was with them until Real Sport decided to go in the different direction that they were in. Um, Obviously, kept in touch with the guys, talk about baseball because to me, that's the best game in the world. That was my first love. Um, right now, I am currently working for Sportsnet, as Steven said. My job mainly consists of working on Hockey Night in Canada, um, which is basically for our American listeners, um, the Canadian equivalent of Football Night in America on Sunday Night Football. It's a big deal north of the border. Um, I got into my love for the Toronto Blue Jays for as long as I can remember. I think the first game I went to was in 2004 in a game against the Red Sox. But having grown up in Mississauga city, just outside of Toronto, maybe 40 minutes out, a 40-minute drive, I had the privilege to go to a lot of Jays games over the summer. It's something I never took for granted, not having to travel far to go to a Jays game. And now, since I haven't been to a Jays game since September of 2019, that's definitely something I will never take for granted again once we return to the new norm, and hopefully we can get back to watching some baseball games live.
Absolutely agree there. That is something that I think we all miss, is not being able to go to the games and actually get that stadium experience and the fan experience. Like you said, I'll never take that for granted either. Once we're able to get back to doing that.
Yeah, absolutely, 100% agreed.
So we usually start our show off with day in history, and since Mr. Kawazoy here is the first ever guest host we've had on this show, it is going to be his duty today to give all of us a little history that happened on this day in baseball. So, Brendan, what do you got for us?
So I'm gonna go back a whole 1 year ago, believe it or not, which honestly still feels like forever ago, given what we've been through this past year. But on this day, exactly 1 year ago, the Cincinnati Reds signed Nicholas Castellanos to a 4-year, $64 million contract, which, yeah, it doesn't sound great, very exciting, but what makes it so significant to me is that matched the largest free agent signing in Cincinnati Reds history, actually matched Mike Moustakas, who signed earlier that winter.
That's a really small sum to be the largest contract ever given out by a single team. Especially with how many guys are getting, $200-300 million these days for like 68, I believe you said, to be the highest ever given out by the Reds. That's crazy.
Yeah, 64.
64.
And yeah, so I say like free agent signing, as in they dipped into the free agent market to make this signing. Like they had an extension with Votto
Oh,
back in
okay.
2010s
Okay.
that was 225 million. So that was the largest contract they ever distributed. But as far as bringing in a free agent, that Castellanos
Okay.
and Moustakas deal were the largest.
Interesting.
Yeah, I was about to ask that because I had thought that Joey Votto had gotten larger money, but it makes sense with bringing a newcomer and not like signing an extension for someone.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us, Brendan. And so, with that said, we are going to go ahead and dive in to our Toronto Blue Jays segment of the show today. So we broke down the Boston Red Sox on Monday, and on yesterday we broke down the Baltimore Orioles. After recording Monday, Adam Ottavino ended up being traded to the Red Sox from the Yankees. After we recorded yesterday, we had talked about how the Orioles' biggest signing was Yolmer Sanchez. Well, they signed Freddie Galvis, shortstop, to a one-year deal yesterday, upgrading that position. So here's to hoping, third time's a charm. We're not going to go through any of that again today, where we're between publishing and editing, and the Blue Jays are going to make a huge splash. So here's to hoping that we'll actually get through this episode and Toronto has on the roster what they had on the roster when this is all said and done. How does that sound, guys?
Yeah.
Oh, we're optimistic. Fingers crossed.
So let's go ahead and get underway with this. So last year in the shortened season, the Toronto Blue Jays finished 32-28. They got the 8th seed in the expanded playoffs, lost to the American League champ Tampa Bay Rays in the wild card round, 2-0. But we saw a very short glimpse of what this team was capable of with all the top prospects that they had coming up through the system, being led by manager Charlie Montoyo, entering his 3rd season with the team. He is 99 and 123 overall. So the first win he will get in 2021 will be his 100th win as a big league skipper. You looking at the lineup last year compared to what they have right now, they don't really have significant losses within the lineup, or within the roster. Their biggest loss, Travis Shaw, the mayor of Ding Dong City. But at this point, it doesn't really look much like a loss considering everything that Toronto has added going into 2021. Brendan, as a Blue Jays fan, and with how much you've been following the team throughout the offseason, I gotta say, maybe other than Mets fans, Blue Jays fans probably have the most excitement and most hype around their team this year. Kind of give us your thoughts on what you think of some of the acquisitions that they've made.
Yeah, well, there's certainly a lot of buzz going on here in Toronto for sure. Obviously, once free agency started, we heard all the reports that the Jays were pretty much in on everybody. So we were always optimistic. We knew they had a lot of money to throw at these free agents, and a lot of time passed, which we expected. The MLB offseason has been slow traditionally the last few years. But then there was almost sort of a panic because there was all the conversations that they could trade for Lindor and sign LeMahieu, and then Lindor got traded to the Mets, so there was one option gone, and then LeMahieu signed back to New York for what was an affordable number, in my opinion. So there was a lot of concern on whether or not the Jays were going to actually do anything because we've never seen them really break the bank for anybody. Like not since the Vernon Wells extension, which oh god, that was a disaster and a half. But then they started making moves. Like they're opposite. They re-signed Robbie Ray for the 1-year deal, and then they picked up Tyler Chatwood. So those were pretty under the radar moves, and the kind of moves you would expect from the Jays, to be honest. And then they brought in Kirby Yates for the 1-year, $5.5 million, and to me, I thought that was a great deal. Like I'm not the kind of person who wants to pay for a closer a lot of money, so to add him on what seems like it could be a bargain deal after his injury in 2020. If he can return to that 2019 form that he had where he led the league in saves, 41 of them, I think that's a huge signing for them. And they got a closer to replace Ken Giles, who I think he won't be coming back, I'm pretty certain. And then, of course, the Springer news that came out, which it was actually first reported by someone named Brendan Kuhn, and he was not verified, but he was known for having a good reputation within the Jays. So he first reported the Springer signing, and no one believed him. And none of the bigger names like Rosenthal, Heyman, Passan, they never what should I say, backed that statement up for a while. So I kind of remember as soon as that tweet came out from Brendan Kuhn, I was refreshing Twitter. Like I think my thumb almost fell off from all the refreshing. And then finally, all the big names started reporting it, and right then and there, that's when like Jays fans started to get excited, and then we learned, okay, this team might be for real now.
Yeah, that is the Toronto Blue Jays, they look like a team. I don't think anyone's really been this excited about them since the 2015 squad they had. Back when they had Bautista and Encarnacion, Donaldson, Smoke. Um, but I think the different thing about this team is that pretty much, yeah, they got a little bit of outside help, but for the most part, this team is homegrown. They got the likes of Kevin Biggio, Bo Bichette, Vlad Guerrero Jr., Lourdes Gurriel. The likes of these guys, at least in the lineup, are mostly homegrown talent compared to the last squad that they had, where they really just went out on the free agent, or they went out not only on the free agent market, but they also made trades to bring in a core to win. And something that Cam and I talked about last week was how a lot of times when teams go into this win now mode and try to trade and sign these big name players and trade for big name guys to make an immediate impact, it doesn't really work for them. But in Toronto's case in 2015, it actually did. Although the success didn't last very long, they only had 2 years where they were legitimate contenders in the postseason. Now it looks like on paper they may be the team to beat going into 2021. Um, and Cam, I don't know what your thoughts are exactly. I know we've kind of been talking on and off because it really looks like at this point the Jays, the Yankees, and the Rays are still the teams to beat, but Toronto might have the edge, especially now because they brought in Marcus Semien yesterday.
Yeah, Marcus Semien's going to be a very good get for the Blue Jays. He really found something in himself when he went to Oakland a few years ago. He really turned it on. He's been a fantastic hitter, usually a high batting average, right around 280 to 300. He's known for hitting bombs. He can hit 30 easily in Toronto. If he decides to stay longer than just 1 year, I expect yearly totals to top 30. Not to mention he's about as slick with the glove as you can get. So, and the fact that he only got a 1 year deal will be fantastic for the Blue Jays because they didn't have to put as big of a I'll say they didn't have to go as far as locking him up as they did with Springer. They didn't have to go nearly as many years. I mean, obviously, the talent level is different there, but someone like Marcus Semien easily could have got 3+ years on a contract. So to be able to lock him up for just a single year, if anything goes wrong, you can just let him go. If he overplays the value of the contract, it'd be very easy to bring him back. I kind of figured that he would go back to the Athletics. That was kind of my number one pick. The Blue Jays really kind of came out of the blue to snatch him up. So I mean, I could see him. I could see him, being very, very good for this Blue Jays lineup. Now, as far as where he will slot in, I'm not entirely sure. They definitely have a lot of soul searching for their infield that's now kind of clogged up with superstar potential talent. Um, you look at Marcus Semien, you look at Bo Bichette, Vlad Guerrero Jr., and Kevin Biggio. Not to mention, Rowdy Tellez, who can play a little first base. They've got multiple guys who play positions. They'll probably have to find somewhere either for Bo Bichette or Marcus Semien. I know Semien has some brief history playing at third base and playing at second base. Bo Bichette, I saw recorded like 30 or 40 career games in the minor leagues at second base. I don't know if he's a movable option from shortstop. I think you might be better off moving Marcus Semien or maybe Kevin Biggio to a different position, and just kind of slotting them one of those guys in there. But yeah, I mean, all the moves that the Blue Jays have made this season have been very good. They haven't gone haywire with their spending, but at the same time, they went out and they shored up areas of their team that they felt could use a good shoring up.
Brendan, what are what are your thoughts as far as the infield goes? Because there are a lot of options here, and I think when I was constructing a mock lineup of what it could look like on opening day, between Bichette, Biggio, and Simeon, I really didn't know where to put these guys going in because all three of them can play just about anywhere. And you also have to figure, I'm not sure if Vlad Guerrero Jr. is going to be at first base, especially because he's gotten a lot leaner. Maybe a move to third is possible for him again. What are some ideas that you have, or what are you thinking is going to be the case going in?
Yeah, so like you, I was also building a projected lineup, and the one thing I did notice when I was doing it was like, man, this is a very versatile baseball team defensively. I mean, like, yeah, you look at Biggio, he can play first, he can play second, he can play third. We saw him do that in the later stages of the 2020 season. He can go into the outfield and he won't care, right? He's a very versatile player. Bo said that he was willing to move positions if it meant an upgrade at shortstop. Simeon can play short. I think the plan is to play Simeon at second this season. That's what I'm hearing at least. Guerrero can also a lot of versatility, like first base, third base. Like you said, he's put a lot of work in this offseason to get leaner. So definitely not a problem there if he can play some third. I still think I would prefer him at first base. Um, as far as an everyday lineup goes, I think it'll be pretty matchup based, and because a lot of these players are interchangeable with one another, so I think it'll be a lot of like you could see Rowdy Tellez in the lineup against righties, and Vladdy will take reps at first against the lefties, kind of thing.
Which makes complete sense. And even at the catching position, they've got three potential catchers who could land on the opening day roster. They've got Danny Jansen, who appears to be kind of maybe the number one. And then they have Reese McGuire, who also plays in the mix. And then they have their number 6 prospect, Alejandro Kirk, who stormed onto the scene last year and made a name for himself and has now made that catching situation complicated. Um, what are some thoughts you have as far as that goes? Who do you think is probably the guy or the two? If would they go with a 2-man catching rotation, or do you think they would stick all three in there? Because I think Kirk may, since there wasn't a minor league season last year, Kirk may benefit from getting some time in the minor leagues. But with the small sample size of games he played in last year, it kind of makes you wonder if he's actually ready for the show. And would the Blue Jays be willing to do a 3-man catching rotation instead of a 2-man?
Yeah, I have a hard time seeing them carrying three catchers at a time. I can certainly see two different situations. I think Danny Jansen will be with the big club no matter what. I think he's probably their best catcher defensively. But I can see what you just said happening with Alejandro Kirk starting in the minors just to get him some at bats down there before you bring him up to the big club and have Reese McGuire as the backup. But I can also see Reese McGuire not being with the big team and playing down in AAA just because of what we saw from Alejandro Kirk in that small sample size. And maybe Toronto wants to ride that hot hand at the plate.
So as far as lineup projection goes, Cam, let's start with you. What is a mock lineup that you've constructed together for the Blue Jays going into opening day?
Well, looking over their projected lineup for me, really the only spot they may not get tremendous offensive production from is DH with Rowdy Tellez. So it's a very stacked lineup. I've got George Springer, as he has for most of his career, leading off, playing center field. I'm sure he leads a lot of metrics in terms of leadoff production, like a Ricky Henderson type of good. Marcus Semien I have hitting second, playing second base. I know he doesn't have a lot of history at second base, but I think he of all people will be able to learn it quickly and effectively. I've got Bo Bichette sticking put at shortstop, batting third. Batting fourth, I've got Teoscar Hernandez playing right field. Batting fifth, I have Vlad Jr. playing first base. I'm sure he could play. He could play a little bit of third base if needed. He could also hit anywhere between 2 through 5 in that lineup. I think like what Brandon said, it'll be very very matchup based. Hitting sixth, playing third base, I've got Kevin Biggio. Hitting seventh, playing left field, I have Lourdes Gurriel Jr. I expect another fantastic year. I know he kind of broke out a little bit last season, so I expect him to really jumpstart himself again this season. Hitting eighth, playing DH, I have Rowdy Tellez, and then I have catcher Danny Jansen playing ninth, playing catcher, hitting ninth.
And Brendan, what about you? What is something that you've got constructed?
So my lineup is mostly similar to Cam's, a little different. I got George Springer leading off in center field. Like Cam said, he's done that for most of his career. I think he's a tremendous leadoff hitter. Batting second, I got Kevin Biggio playing third base. I think he's got a great on-base percentage, takes a lot of walks. He's a solid base runner. I think he should stay at the top of the lineup. Batting third, I got Bo Bichette hit at shortstop. Batting fourth, I have Teoscar Hernandez. Right now, I have him slated in as the DH. Of course, that's interchangeable. They can be Rowdy there. The reason I got Teoscar there is because he's not the greatest defensive outfielder in the scheme, or when you consider who they have with Springer, Gurriel, and Grichook. Batting fifth, I got Vlad Guerrero Jr. playing first base. In second, or playing second base, batting sixth, I have Marcus Semien, the new guy. Batting seventh in left field, I got Lourdes Gurriel Jr. Like Cam said, we've seen what he can do at full potential. He's got a great arm, and I think if he takes that extra step at the plate, he could be a really strong offensive presence for this Jays lineup. Batting eighth, I got Randall Grichook playing in right field. Reason I got him in the starting lineup, they're paying him $52 million over 5 years. I don't think they're too inclined to have him as a bench player and making a spot start every once in a while. So I think he'll be in the lineup a lot more than some people think. Also, he's a very strong defensive outfielder too, so I think they'll want him in the lineup quite a bit. And then batting ninth, I got Danny Jansen at catcher.
That sounds like a really strong lineup, and I think, like you both mentioned, there's a lot of versatility in there as well. So you could almost slot anyone into the outfield on a given day. You can slot anyone into the DH role on a given day. Even if this team, if for some reason they were to hit an injury bug, they've got they're still a loaded team. They've got guys who can come in and easily take starting roles, which is something that you don't really see a lot as far as balance goes with teams, it feels like now. Let's go ahead and talk the rotation and the bullpen now. And the Blue Jays have a pretty healthy dose of veterans, but also young guys that are coming through their system. And they also have some of those young guys who could take on bullpen roles if they don't win starting jobs. I want to hear your guys' opinion on this, but do you guys think, first of all, could the Blue Jays go a 6-man rotation? And then the second question, is Nate Pearson going to be on the opening day roster?
Yeah, I fully expect Nate Pearson to be on the opening day roster. As long as he stays healthy. I think we saw in the small season, or the shortened season last year, the small sample size, just how dominant he can be. Obviously, he's a very young pitcher, and there's still lots to be improved, but I fully expect him to be on the opening day roster, and I actually have him slotted in as the number 2 starter right now.
All right.
Yeah, jumping over to me, my rotation, I think this is probably the biggest question mark that the Blue Jays still have, whether or not they plan on snagging another guy outside of Hyun-Jin Ryu and Nate Pearson, they do have a couple question marks. I don't think we're entirely sure what the Blue Jays can expect to get from Robbie Ray, Tanner Roark, or Ross Stripling. They've all had success in their careers, but they've also all had some pretty big down years. I think they're putting a lot of hope, I think, into a rotation that it's a good rotation, but I think it'll be interesting to see which guy they get. Ray, Roark, and Stripling. I don't know how often they're going to get the good versions of those guys, and I don't know how often they'll get the bad versions. I'm sure they have a few guys who they would like to get some more minor league experience before they call up this season that could potentially take over one of those spots. But yeah, I think the rotation's probably their biggest question mark going into 2021.
So, Cam, what do you have as far as a rotation order right now?
As far as the rotation order right now, I've got Hyun-Jin Ryu as the ace. I've got Nate Pearson as the number 2. I have Ross Stripling as the number 3, Robbie Ray as the number 4, and Tanner Roark as the number 5.
And Brendan, what about you?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the idea of them bringing in a 6-man rotation, because that's what I have slated in right now. Maybe an occasional spot start for some bullpen guys, maybe. But right now, I got like Cam, Hyun-Jin Ryu is the clear-cut ace in Toronto right now. Nate Pearson is my number 2 guy, as I mentioned earlier. My number 3 guy is Ross Stripling, like Cam mentioned. My number 4 guy is Tanner Roark. The number 5 guy is Robbie Ray, and then for the 6th man, I got Trent Thornton and when he does come back from his injury, missed a lot of 2020 last year, and that's a big part of why they acquired Taijuan Walker last year.
I was actually about to ask about Trent Thornton because I saw that he had elbow surgery. It wasn't Tommy John, but they just removed some loose bodies from his elbow, and it looks like the team is expecting him to be ready for opening day. But this also goes into my point about how the Jays have a lot of options that if these guys don't necessarily make the rotation, they can easily get slotted into the bullpen. So if Thornton isn't really seen as a starter at the moment, but he's good enough to be on the team, could see a lot of bullpen action from him. Tyler Chadwood, another guy they just recently signed, he has starting experience, and he was a guy I was thinking could potentially be in the rotation if he pitches well enough as well, although I think they see him more as a bullpen piece. And then there's Jacob Wagesback, who I noticed didn't really pitch a lot last year either, but in a handful of starts in 2019, he recorded an ERA just a little above 4 and was 5-5 on the season. So could Jacob Wagesback also be in the mix going into the year if his injury from last season doesn't take a toll on him?
Yeah, I think we need to remember is that the last couple of years we've seen Charlie Montoyo having come from the Rays hasn't shied from using the opener every once in a while. So I think definitely you could see Tyler Chatwood maybe getting a couple innings to start the game. Maybe Thomas Hatch, Anthony Kay. They've also got also Jacob Wagespack. If he finds a way onto the big league roster, he could be that guy who comes in after the second inning and throws 4 or 5 innings.
And now let's talk the bullpen. I mentioned Chatwood. Kirby Yates is also a newcomer that they brought in. They also have Shun Yamaguchi, who they signed from Japan. So the bullpen seems to be pretty open right now. They think they have guys who can compete for spots pretty easily in that area of the team. But what do you guys think the Blue Jays bullpen is going to look like going into opening day, and who are some guys that we could look out for to make big impacts on that side of the field?
Well, looking at their bullpen, it's definitely more solidified than their rotation might be. I think they have a lot of guys. I think Tyler Chatwood getting out of Chicago, I think will be a good thing for Tyler, even though he might be going to a division that has more offense, much more offense than the NL Central. Any division you go to that doesn't have the Pirates in is an immediate step up. So going to the AL East may not look good on paper, but I think Chatwood, maybe, like I said, different scenery, different coaching staff, potentially different, training routines or something like that. I think he could be a good versatile long relief guy for this bullpen. The addition of Kirby Yates is an incredibly good signing for the Blue Jays, especially if they decide not to bring back Ken Giles. I would like them to bring back Giles. I think he would be a great re-addition to this club, especially having acquired the big name pieces that they have in Semien, Springer, and Yates. I think he would be a great, even if you decide to have Kirby Yates close and Giles set up, or Yates set up and Giles close, either way would be great. But I think they'll survive just fine without him. I also think Anthony Kay could play a pretty big role, whether it be in the rotation at some point, maybe getting a few spot starts, or as a good bullpen guy. He's kind of a person to look out for. I've been high on him for a couple years now, so I think the opportunity to pitch every day and have a good run of success could be great for this bullpen.
Yeah, looking at the bullpen myself, like a couple names that I noticed that can make a pretty strong impact. Like I'm looking at Ryan Burucky right now. When he came up, he was they gave him a few starts in 2018. It didn't go great, but we saw missed most of 2019 with an injury. But then when 2020 rolled around, he was a mainstay in the bullpen and put up some fantastic numbers in the shortened season. Posted a sub-3 ERA on 16.2 innings pitched. So I'm looking at him to be maybe a setup man or kind of a 6 inning guy for the Blue Jays out of the pen. And I'm also looking at Rafael Dolis, who we saw get a lot of closing experience last year after the Ken Giles injury. And then, like Cam said, getting Kirby Yates on that discount deal, it could be a really great ad for the Blue Jays. If he can return to that 2019 form, they definitely have a strong closer coming out of the pen.
There's three other names I actually want to bring up that did not hear mentioned. The first one is TJ Zuch. And Zuch is currently the number 29 prospect on the club right now. I'm not sure how you guys feel if he's going to actually be on the opening day roster, but in a very small sample size of games last year, he recorded a 2.38, or I'm sorry, a 1.59 ERA on the team. I know it was only 3 games, but he also had a brief time on the club in 2019 and didn't pitch too badly in those 5 games either, recorded a 4.76 ERA. So he's one guy that I had my eye on as a potential in that bullpen. And then the second guy that I was looking at was Jordan Romano. And according to Fangraphs, Romano could be also a big player in this bullpen. And looking at his stats, he broke in 2019 as well in 17 games, 7.63 ERA. But last year in 15 games, he was 2-1 and recorded an ERA of 1.23. So those are 2 guys that I had my eye on, and I don't know what your guys' thoughts are on this, but I would almost expect to see those 2 playing roles on the team at some point as well this year, as well as Sean Reed Foley.
Yeah, I will echo your. Let me try that again. I will echo your thought on Jordan Romano. I think 2020 was a very good year for him. It was a nice coming out year. So, like you said, I fully expect him as well. Now that you mention it, that he will be a strong member of this bullpen, and we could see a lot of him.
And Cam, what about you? How do you feel about?
Yeah, I could see both of those guys that you mentioned making some sort of contribution to the team this year. I think they'll both benefit from having potentially a full minor league season, because I don't know if they're both of them are quite ready yet to be full everyday major league mainstays. but I do think they could offer some good value in maybe a slightly limited role. I know they both had good seasons last year after kind of down seasons the year before, but last year was very weird. I want to take very little for credit from last season. You know, there were a lot of guys that kind of threw up mixed signals with their statistics from last season. So I think benefiting from a full minor league season will do them a lot of good. But like you said, I do expect both of them to make some sort of contribution to the big league club.
And one last thing to talk about with this team, top prospects. They had a handful of guys on their top 30 prospects from last year make their debuts and make impacts on the team. Nate Pearson, for example, their number 1, and then Alejandro Kirk, who is their number 6 prospect. But they've got some guys on the radar, I think, that could also be on the team at some point this year, that maybe didn't necessarily make impacts on the team last year. But Brendan, as the Blue Jays guy here, who are some prospects you've got your eye on, and why do you have your eye on them necessarily?
Yeah, so I'm looking at Patrick Murphy, who's the number 18 prospect in the system. We saw he came up for a very short time in 2020, posted a 1.5 ERA in the 4 games. But looking at him to be maybe a September call up or injury replacement at some point in 2021. Also looking at Julian Merriweather, who, well, a lot of people might not know, he came in the Josh Donaldson trade from Cleveland in 2018. We saw him make a few starts and appearances in 2020, and I like what I saw. Still some work to be done as far as he goes, but I think he's the number 21 prospect right now. I've got my eye on him. I think he also could. We could see him in 2021, and he could take another step.
Cam, what about you?
Yeah, I don't follow the Blue Jays prospects as closely as I probably should, but I do look forward to seeing Nate Pearson. I know he had kind of a cup of tea last season, didn't pitch all that often, but I do look for him to be a big guy for the Blue Jays going forward. Even if he has just a kind of a shaky, full rookie season this year, I expect him to be a very big player for the Blue Jays moving forward in their future.
And I'll just echo TJ Zuch. I think he could be a surprise option for the Jays this year. I have a feeling that we may see him a lot sooner. By the way, Zuch is 6'7", and looking at some of these prospects the Jays have, they have some massive guys on the mound. Most specifically, I mean, Pat Murphy is 6'5", 235. Zuch 6'7", 245. Even Pearson is 6'6", 250. These are John Rauch type of build players here that the Jays have. And I know that sometimes with taller pitchers, there's some concern as to whether or not they can actually keep the ball down. They can get movement on their baseballs down. I'm not sure if you guys share the same concern and whatnot, but I didn't realize that some of the size these guys have kind of makes me wonder how this could even play a part going into in not only just this year, but even into their careers.
Yeah, there's been some history of some tall guys, not with players being as built as they are today, arm injuries seem to be playing a bigger role than ever. You always have to wonder with guys who, especially pitchers who pump the weights, more often than they probably should. You always have to worry just a little bit about the potential to injure something, muscle wise. But I think the Blue Jays have a good system in place. They don't have a history of their young guys, especially their young, big built pitchers suffering a lot of these injuries. I think that if anything, they could benefit from having just a, 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 a big bruising starting rotation here in the near future of just guys who are going to stare you down. They're going to be taller than you. They're going to be thicker than you. And then they're just going to kind of dictate their will on the field.
Yeah, I also echo what Cam just said there. Fully agree with yeah, totally agree with what he said there. As far as Nate Pearson goes, because you talked about like how big he is, it speaks to velocity as well, especially with Nate Pearson. Like we've seen, he can throw up to 103. Little concern for me there as far as injuries go, just because as a starting pitcher, like being able to throw that hard for, um, let's say he throws 90 pitches a game, like obviously I think that's a ton of stress on your arm, your elbow, your shoulder, take your pick. Little concern there, but sorry, I lost my train of thought. But I'm confident that um, shoot, sorry guys.
Oh, you're good.
You're good.
You're good.
Forget where I was going with this.
You were
What was
talking
that?
about some of the maybe a little concern with Pearson's injury, maybe
Yes.
potentially injury his arm.
Yeah. So if he's going to continue as a starter, he'll probably need to. That's something they'll need to keep an eye on with his elbow. But I can also see potentially, like, if it doesn't work out with Nate Pearson as a starter, like I could see him also becoming a closer in the future. Like, should Kirby Yates not stick around for very long, with Nate Pearson being able to throw as hard as he can, if it doesn't work out as a starter, he could be a very effective closer. And we've seen a lot of starters convert to closers. Kirby Yates himself was a starter when he came up, right? So,
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
So was Wade Davis.
Mm-hmm.
And I think John Rauch was actually a starter at one time too.
Well,
and then
even Mariano Rivera started his career as a starter.
it's true. And then John Smoltz even went to the closer's role after he had Tommy John surgery. So it's a good class there of guys if it doesn't necessarily work out. I mean, yes, the Blue Jays would rather have Pearson, I think, in the rotation, but if it needs to come down to he needs to go to the bullpen and be the closer, you could easily see that working as well. Well, Brendan, we thank you so much for being on the show with us today.
Absolutely.
We very much appreciate your insight on the Blue Jays and just kind of telling us about the team, how they're going to look. I am very excited for this team. I think this is one of the teams to be on the lookout for. And to be perfectly honest, if you're trying to get into the game of baseball and you haven't really found a team yet to root for, I would suggest watching the Blue Jays this year. I think they're going to be a lot of fun. They're going to be a scrappy team that just goes out there and punches you in the jaw every night. To kind of look at the 2021 season based on who they have, let's hear win projections. For me, I think 90 wins would be a very good start for this team, considering they have a lot of guys who still haven't necessarily played with each other yet. And considering this is the first year of trying to win, I think 90 wins is a good start. I'll go to say as far as a ceiling, I think this team could win 97 games if all goes well. I don't imagine they'd win fewer than 87 games. How about you guys? What are you guys' thoughts on win projection this year?
I probably right around in your ballpark. I say there's not much of a chance they lose. They should. I don't think they win fewer than 88, 89 wins. I don't think they have more than 100. I think they'll be right there. I think they'll be mid to high 90s in terms of wins. And that's a great season. Whether or not I do think that I think the Rays have taken a big enough step back that there's a very, very real possibility that they could get jumped instantly by the Blue Jays. Where the Blue Jays have taken big steps forward, the Rays have taken big steps back. And I think that instead of the Yankees being as worried about the Rays, I think instead of the Yankees being the main worry with the Blue Jays coming up, the Rays should be the ones worried about the Blue Jays coming up, because I think the Rays have brought themselves back to the pack, having lost Snell and having lost Morton, even having lost a good hitter like Renfroe. I think that there's a real possibility that they could fall down to third place in this division.
Yeah, as far as win projections go for me, like the record I could realistically see them having is like maybe an 88-74 year. Only because they're just such a young ball club that it might not come together right away for them. But I can also all see them winning 94 games maybe this year. As far as in the division, like I can't say I see them winning the division yet. I don't think they're quite there with the Yankees yet. And I would like to think that they could finish in second, but we've also seen with the Rays, like they can just play good baseball. They don't necessarily need a bunch of star players, and they always play Toronto really hard. So I can also see them finishing as low as third in the division. As much as I want to say that they can leapfrog the Rays, I think it's very possible that the Rays finish top two and finish higher than the Jays.
Yeah, that's very possible.
Yeah, that's a good point you bring up with that as well. Second or third, at least, I think is very doable for Toronto. If they win the division, that would be an absolute A plus. But in Brendan, you brought up a good point. This is a relatively young team still, so I think that was kind of why I said 88-90 wins seems to be a good ceiling or a good level for them. Because you got the Yankees to deal with as well, and the Yankees seem to be the better team, and really it's hard to pick against the Yankees as it is. So the Jays do have their work cut out for them, but they nonetheless have a bright future going for them. There's a lot to be excited for the fans. I know Brendan's excited. The last couple of weeks have been like Christmas to him.
Yeah.
So this is going to be a fun year for Jays fans, I think, and it's going to be a fun next few seasons for them as well. Brendan, why don't you go ahead and give your social media, your Twitter handle out, so then our supporters can follow you as well.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at therealbk_20. It's the same handle on Instagram. My Facebook is Brendan Kawazoye. Yeah.
Very nice. Brendan, again, thank you so much for being on the show with us today. You are in our history books as the first official guest host. So congratulations to you, and we wish you the best of luck at Sportsnet on Hockey Night in Canada. What is that usually a one day of the week kind of thing, or is that like a nightly thing out there?
It can be 2 nights a week because I'm only there on nights when we do national broadcasts. So those are Saturday nights and Wednesday nights. Sometimes it'll be one shift a week. Sometimes it'll be two if I'm lucky. But most of the time, yeah, just a 1 night a week thing.
Most definitely. That sounds very exciting. So thank you again, guys, for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed the show today. I'm Stephen Gossman.
I'm Cameron Langle.
I'm Brendan Kawazoye.
And you can follow us on Twitter at Dugout Talk. Our YouTube page is Dugout Talk, and the Facebook page is also Dugout Talk. Until then, we'll see you tomorrow when we break down the New York Yankees. Be sure to share this podcast with your friends, family, the barista at your favorite coffee shop, and any Blue Jays fans you know out there. We'll see you guys tomorrow.
See you guys.